It's in the dark times that are the dark times are really the best place and time to learn about the grace of God. See, I've given the man credit, but let's take a look at the way in which he prays. Here's some things he's not doing all that well. For example, some of this prayer is not really a prayer, it's an interrogation. So, for example, when he says, do you show your wonders to the dead? Do those who are dead rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave? These are sarcastic, rhetorical questions. He says, is your faithfulness known in the land of destruction? Here's what he's saying. He says, I want to be your witness. I want to tell the world about you. How am I going to do that if I'm dead? I have all these things I want to do for you. You know that. And yet you're not letting me do any of them. How much sense does that make? He comes very close to saying, answer me, God. Some people would call this intemperate. Some people would call it blasphemous. It's probably somewhere in the middle. But of course, he's not controlling his heart. He's not being deferential. He's not being respectful. He's not saying, thy will be done. Oh, no. Also, by the way, many commentators point something out that you might miss. I certainly have over the years. But there's another place where he says, from my youth I have been afflicted and close to death. From my youth I have suffered your terrors and am in despair. Now, we're going to see in a minute, because the heading of this psalm tells us who this person is who's writing this, or praying this. This is almost certainly an exaggeration. What he's actually saying is, all my life I've been in danger of death. All my life you have been abandoning me. You've never been there for me, God. Never. That's really what he's saying. And almost certainly that's an exaggeration. And there's a tendency for us to do that when we're in despair. When we're just out of our minds with anger and grief and fear and despair, we tend to read everything in our life through that moment. Instead of standing back and say, well, Lord, in the past you did many good things for me. And some of the Psalms do that. This guy is not doing that. This prayer is not doing that. He's saying, you've never been there for me. He's exaggerating. He's cross-examining God. He's being incredibly disrespectful, if not blasphemous. And of course, the last statement, darkness is my closest friend, is quite a charge. You know what he's saying? He's saying to God, God, darkness is a better friend than you are right now. I'd rather have darkness than you. Even darkness is more of a comfort than you are. So he's not doing things very well. And you have to ask yourself the question, why in the world is this prayer in the Bible? And many years ago, this prayer and also Psalm 88 and Psalm 39, which are very similar, Psalm 39 ends with the psalmist saying, turn your face away from me, God, so I can get a little bit of peace before I die. So Psalm 39 and Psalm 88 end with this despair and this anger toward God, and it just ends that way. And I never knew what to do with these prayers. I just sort of skipped over them really quickly. I would never imagine, by the way, preaching on them. But many years ago, I read just two sentences in a little commentary by Derek Kidner. Derek Kidner was the warden of Tyndale House in Cambridge for many, many years. And talking about these prayers, he said something that just went through me like a shaft. It changed my life, not only toward these prayers, but it changed my life in understanding how to handle darkness. And this is what he said, quote, the very presence of these prayers in Scripture is a witness to God's understanding. God knows how men speak when they are desperate. Now, do you realize what that means? What Kidner is saying is the very fact that God put these in the Psalter, God put them there. They're there because God put them there. What does that tell us about God? A lot. See, you don't have God looking at this prayer saying, I don't want that in my Bible. My goodness, I don't want anybody to think that it's okay to pray like that. I don't want to identify myself as the God of someone who prays like that. But God does put it in the Bible. And that means God is identifying with those of us who sometimes pray like that. You know why? He's a God of grace. He's understanding. He knows how we speak when we're desperate. Oh, my word. God is saying, I am the God of this man, even though he's not getting it right. because I'm a God of grace. And here's what he's saying to you. God is saying to you through this psalm, he says, I am your God, not because you put on a happy face in the morning. I am your God, not because you say everything right, not because you do everything right. I'm your God because I'm a God of grace. Do you know how liberating that is? I can tell you, let me just say, I've learned 10 times more about the grace of God in dark times than I ever did in times of prosperity.